I get to be a moderator. We've had some great moderation over the last few days, some fantastic panels, particularly about charging earlier on today, this morning. I thought was particularly interesting. So we're going to talk about innovation and policy drivers for a cleaner tomorrow. How is that future of EVs going to emerge? What's the detail behind it? So I'm going to ask to come up on the stage with me. I'll say all the names first, then if you'd all come up together, we'll give you a round of applause. So we have Andreas Feil, First Secretary for Climate, Energy and Environment at the Embassy of Abu Dhabi. We have Ivan Sousa, CEO Iskraemeco of Emobility. Raine, Renaldi, Chief of Economy and Digital Asset Committee, Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, truly international group. Alexis, Rostand, Managing Director of Eiffel Investment Group and SEO of Eiffel Investment ME, and myself, Roger Atkins. So would you please welcome my panel to the stage, please? Please join me. Thank you. And if you can sit underneath your picture, it helps for lack of confusion with everybody. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind doing that. Andreas, you're next to me. Thank you. You can move that out. Wait. So, yeah, just out of interest, do any of you know each other other than the prep call we had? Had you ever met each other at all in any fashion?
No.
Oh, it's like a dating show then, isn't it? They're meeting for the first time. So have you all been here just for today, or have any of you been here all 3 days? I'm not checking up on you. It's just, a thought. Andreas?
Yeah, for me it's just today, unfortunately. I would have loved to be here yesterday and the day before as well.
Okay.
But some work kept me busy at office, but I'm happy to be here finally.
Yeah, well, that's good. How about yourself, Raine? You've, traveled quite a bit to be here, so thank you for doing that.
Sure.
Was it just for today, or have you been here before?
Yeah, I just arrived at the Abu Dhabi today for this event.
And is it your first time in Abu Dhabi?
This is my first time at Abu Dhabi, so yeah. I want to enjoy this Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, same for me. I mean, it's, we'll get into talking about first impressions in a bit for sure. Ivan, I suspect this is not your first time here, am I right?
Not at all. I've been in Eiffel since the first time they have, is third time in a row. We were here in the first event. It was smaller, now it's bigger.
Can you just put the mic a little bit nearer?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And this year we are here, we have a booth, we are exhibiting our products, and that's it. 3 days in here.
Yeah. And Alexis, you're more than welcome. Is this your first time either at this event or to visit the region?
Yeah, actually, I do live in Abu Dhabi, so I'm setting up the business here, but still, it's my first time at the event. And only been today actually, but happy to be there.
I had to confess on day one as to why has it taken me so long to come here, because, and certainly the way the world is right now, we've got a lot of instability, a lot of confusion. I'm not going to mention his name, but we've got a lot of challenge around the world, in one place perhaps more than somewhere else, but there is a lot of confusion, if I can put it like that. So to be in a region, to be in the UAE in particular, but to be in this particular region where you have, with what's going on around the rest of the world, a relative oasis of calm, where you have that political stability and economic stability. We know that economic situation is predicated on oil. But so it is in Norway. And I've just been in Norway at the Nordic EV Summit. So it's a comparable sized oil state going on a transition to both electric mobility and renewable energy. So yeah, that's very good. Anyway, we want to hear from you, not me. So I'm going to go right back down the end there again, Raine. Can you just give us a kind of 60-second presentation of who you are and what you do in this arena of electric vehicles?
Okay, so in Indonesia, I'm the chairman of the Smart City Provider Association, and then I help also the government to bring the city to the higher level. And then also, I have my EV company, specific for mass public transportation, like a metro capsule. And then also here, especially for Indonesian Chambers of Commerce, as the chief of Economy and Digital Asset Committee, I try to bring the digital asset into one of the diplomation stuff that I can bring to the global. So yeah, that's my background basically.
Thank you. Ivan, this stuff isn't new to you, is it? You know, you've been at FSEC in Portugal. You're now doing what you're doing now. Would you like to give us a little flavor of who you are now and what you're up to?
Yeah. So actually now I'm the general manager of Iskraemeco. Iskraemeco is a company that belongs from Elsewhere Electric Group, based at headquarters in Egypt. We have presence in here in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, in this region. My backlog, I'm working in Emobility since 2009. So we have a lot of knowledge. We see a lot of companies grow, some case of success, other one not at all. But we learn from it, and for this new company, we are bringing all the knowledge, the success and the failures, and we are a new approach to e-mobility. That's it.
Very good, very good.
You.
Raine, sorry, not Raine, let me get names right, Alexis. Anybody that's got investment in their job title is inevitably going to be popular. Well, in theory, because a lot of what we're talking about here in terms of change, development, etc., of course, is predicated on investment, you know, public and private investment. So give us your little flavor of story then in regard to what you're doing with all of that.
Yeah, sure. So indeed, as you said, I'm an investor. So which means Eiffel, the company we've developed in France, and now that we've established in the UAE, is mostly investing in companies, and we do that through two main strategies. So either we provide debt to the company and to the projects, or equity, so we take shares in them. So that's what we do. And within that, we have a very strong specialties. You know, back from the very beginning of the company, we built up 15 years ago, is which we dedicated to energy transition space. So we're really, as you could say, pure player in that space. And when it comes to mobility, obviously that's a great part of the energy transitions. So to give you an idea, we manage something like $8 billion, and maybe half of that, great half, is dedicated to this strategy. So we do mostly invest in infrastructure projects as long as they are green. And we started doing that in France, and now we're pretty much widespread in Europe. And our intention is to companies to finance this company outside Europe. So we started doing that in the US and obviously here. So that's basically what we do.
Very good. And it's Eiffel Investment Group. You haven't got an office in the Eiffel Tower, have you? Because that would be pretty cool if you did.
Yeah, actually we don't. I mean, we see the Eiffel Tower from where we are.
Yeah.
There's no. We often have the question. There's no relation whatsoever with Eiffel family or the tower. It's just for the story that before we were renamed Eiffel, the company was called Louis Dreyfus, which is a very large industrial group, and then it was when we spun off, we renamed Eiffel as a demonstration of the French industrial excellence, at least in these days. So yeah. So we're not in Eiffel still. And
is it true? I've heard that there's a room, a sort of hotel or something, or a bedroom or something, on the very top of the Eiffel Tower. Is that true?
Yeah. There are just things three levels, and then you have the restaurant, and then you have a room, and even I think Eiffel, the builder, had his own room at the top of the tower. Indeed.
Is it on Airbnb? Can you know? No, I know. I'm being silly now. Yeah. Okay. I'm being silly. Andreas, First Secretary for Climate, Energy and Environment, the Embassy of Dubai in Dubai. What's your, give us your little bit of background, but more specifically, what are you doing now, and how are you focused on that here on behalf of your country?
Yeah, thank you, Roger. So after what you said about Alexis' job title, I'm considering changing my job title as well. I think everybody needs popularity, right? No, I came here to the UAE in 2023 in the year of COP28. And I'm basically the product of a government reform we had at the beginning of the current legislation, which meant that our government created something like climate diplomacy. And climate diplomacy meant in concrete terms that the government selected 4 embassies around the world that would be focal point embassies for our climate diplomacy, and this was, besides Washington, Beijing, and Canberra, Abu Dhabi. So right. Why Abu Dhabi? Because the UAE, as you mentioned, is a traditional oil producer, a big oil producer with the 7th biggest oil reservoirs on the world. But it has been very ambitious in terms of climate policy, trying to achieve climate neutrality by 2050, being a leader also in e-mobility in the region. And we said we want to accompany our friends in the UAE on this trajectory and to support wherever we can. And that's what I do on different sectors, e-mobility, but also beyond.
Very good. Now, I want to be careful in some of what I'm going to ask you all about. So if I ask you something that's maybe a bit too delicate, just sort of look at me in a funny way, and then I know you don't want to answer it. When it comes to policy, we're going to talk about 2 things. We're going to talk about innovations and policy drivers. Now, policy, typically, I suppose we're talking about policy from government. Now, you have some governments in the world that are democratic, which is their choice, and that means those governments change. So what changes with that is the policy. So, for example, if you look at a country that isn't a democracy, China, it has had a long-standing 10-year industrial strategy, aka policy, called Made in China 2025, which has enabled it to become a world leader in so many of these things and get stuff done. Raine, you were nodding there. So
Sure.
There's a reason you're nodding. So I'd like to know what that is in regard to that backdrop.
Okay, sure. So I think that the policy, from the government support is really important. First, I already told you that Indonesia is starting to build many smart city in Indonesia. There is the city in Indonesia. There is more than 200 city. Okay, and then currently. We already signed the agreement on the G20 for the net zero carbon. And then right now, Indonesia government try to reduce all the carbon give the subsidy to every, to the Indonesian people to convert their vehicle to electric. Okay, let's say I can say like this. You know that in Indonesia there is 178 million vehicles. Okay, and then 129 million is motorcycle. Okay, 2 wheels.
129 million. Wow.
Yeah, it's like a really huge numbers. Okay, and then for the last 2 years, Indonesia government give the subsidy for every people that want to convert their combustion engine motorcycle to electric. They can provide like $1,000 for the bike. So basically, if you find the right workshop or for that, it's like a free. Okay, it's like a free to convert to electricity. Why this is happen? Because simple. Indonesia government thinks that it's better for them to spend a lot of money by converting the vehicle to electricity. To electric vehicle, than to subsidy the gas. Okay, the oil for the combustion engine. Okay, because it will take they spend 1, they save 4. The ratio in Indonesia for this. Okay.
Sure. You mentioned 129 million two-wheelers. They're not all electric now, are they?
No, it's all combustion engine, and then it causes pollution, as you know.
So what's the policy or the plan to turn those 129 million into electric? Because we've seen that happen in many other parts of the world already.
Sure. That's why right now some of the city mayor is trying to discuss about the what is it, the regulation for. So let's say for the main road, it's only for the EV. Okay, if you are using a still combustion engine, you can use the alternative or something like that.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's one of the discussion for to support the electric vehicle. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Alexis, as an investor, you want stability, you want confidence, you want a kind of runway of time, so that when you're making investments, you've got a reasonable chance of success. You know, that's the name of the game. How is it for you in the democratic cycle of policy, and sometimes even within that, where things can change, sometimes quite radically? So you've made an assumption based on a policy, and then the policy or the government changes. How do you cope with that?
Yeah, I mean, you're true. You know, I mean, our mandate as investors indeed to try to assess, you know, the risk on the long term, and either through debt or equity. We know that we have at least 5 to 7 years a reason to consider before investing. Through debt, you know, we need to be repaid at some point, and through equity, we hope we can get some value out of the investment. So indeed, it's quite key. Our fundamental belief still, it's, you know, on the long run, we believe, you know, for at least, you know, 2 good reasons that, you know, the necessity to converge towards energy transition is, you know, it's a long-term trend. And just, you know, by the fact that some countries, typically in France, needs to be sovereign in terms of their own energy. I mean, that's the key purpose, and obviously the crisis in Ukraine show that, and I mean, intensively. So on the long term, we're quite confident that there needs to be a balanced mix of energy, and we all know that. But still, yeah, still indeed, you're true when you said that there could be some uncertainties, beginning, I mean, and some obstacles, sometimes for particular reasons. To give you a very concrete example, so 2 weeks ago, you know, I think that, you know, the French state published what they call the PPE, which is along the program, which translate as a energy policy program over the 10 years times. And there's been a lot of criticisms, especially in the current political debate, because at some point this program needs to be validated by the parliament on the assumptions that were made about, you know, the financing costs of typically subsidizing the you know, wind or solar panels.
Yeah.
So indeed, there also, I mean, a risk, and that can be, you know, at some points, you know, come from, as you say, the democratic game, and we know that even though on the long term we know that there are some goals to be achieved. So it's clearly when we assess investment, that's part of the risk, and probably more than even 4 or 5 years ago, the political instability, even in France, is an issue we need to consider. Not to mention, obviously, the tariff strike and everything. So that's, but yeah, despite that, we are still, that's only part of the risk, and we know that there can be some adjustment on the policy. The other part of the risk is the soundness of a company, and the technological risk. I mean, it's not a pure risk. Typically, in our models, we assess that, you know, it could be, I mean, it's a combination of all this risk. And to come typically on the example of electric cars, or electric mobility, we've invested some 2 years ago in a company called Electra, that is specialized in a cylindrical recharging battery. And despite, you know, the possible change in the political framework on subsidizing the electric, we are confident that, you know, the need to build up, you know, chargings, especially in France, in Benelux, so in Germany, is so huge that, you know, it could, I would say, you know, compensate the political risks that we know are here, and that's, you know, it's well, it's balanced. But,
and of course, you know, France, a bit like you have within the UAE member states, you have 7, we have a good number in Europe. We used to be in the European Union, the British, but sorry about that, we left. I don't know how it happened, I don't know why it happened, but it did. So you've kind of got 2 policy drivers. You've got the EU and you've got the national national, government. So in that regard, you want to say something, I can tell. What's your sense, Andreas, then, of this challenge of policy changing and coming and going, in your country?
I want to contradict a little bit the impression that democratic systems are very volatile and non-democratic systems are very stable in the long term.
I'm not a communist, by the way. Please don't think I'm a communist. Okay, I'm just observing.
Maybe that applies to certain democracies on the other side of the Atlantic. But I give you an example of Germany. So Germany introduced its climate strategy in 2019 with the goal of being climate neutral by 2045, which is...
Is that called Energiewende?
No, Energiewende only applies to the energy sector, and it was decided already 10 years earlier.
Right.
But the climate goal was adopted in 2019 to be climate neutral by 2045, which is the most ambitious goal of the industrial countries. And it was decided under a conservative social democratic coalition. Then in the next government, the Green Party entered the government and they still maintained the general goal. Of course, they made some goals, some sub-targets and so on. And now we are having a new government in May, consisting again of the Conservatives and the Social Democrats. So everybody was wondering after the last years under the Green Party when the economy did not develop as foreseen and we hoped for more growth, then maybe now the Conservatives will do away with all the climate policy and introduce a very economy-friendly climate policy. But that did not happen. So if you look into the new coalition agreement, which is the government strategy for the next 4 years, you see very clearly that also this government sticks to the same goals. Of course, the instruments are a little bit different. They are a bit more keen to use carbon pricing, for example, a bit more technology neutral, but the general direction is the same.
Yeah. And this is where the whole journey gets interesting, because on the one hand, a policy driver, the big one is CO2. Of course it is. Second one, you could argue, air quality. And then you can go down a whole bunch of others. But what seems to be emerging more recently, and you could argue the Chinese worked this out a long time ago, was the key policy driver should be about economics, should be about building sustainable businesses, sustainable not just in their environmental credentials, but sustainable because they make money. And I personally think that we are starting to see more, if you like, awareness of how to make money. What is the money objective here? How do you build equipment for charging? How do you make electric vehicles proposition? There is a bit of shakedown going on around all this. And Ivan, you've been in this business for quite some time now, haven't you? You're an old soldier. You've served your time, as it were. What's your sense of how, over that period of time you've been in it, policies come and go? It's been easy to sell stuff, then not so easy. What's your take on it?
Yeah, you know that nowadays, as a manufacturer, we are surfing the waves of the policies. It's like that, When we started in 2009, was not clarity at all about e-mobility. So we develop products according what we think that probably e-mobility will be, But nowadays, e-mobility for us is very clear. We just need to connect all the dots from the policies, innovations, and to balance that. So, for example, in Portugal, that is, maybe the people are not aware, but Portugal was one of the first countries where the mobility started. We deployed the first chargers with Nissan and so on. And you see, nowadays, for example, I was just seeing the data from this month, and we grow 32% on e-mobility from the previous year, the current month. So it's roughly 6,000 cars new for this actual month. Okay, so it's not bad at all. But why this happened? And you see why this happening, because, for example, EV100 that we talked about before, that is EV100 is a commitment from 100 companies that tell until 2030 they have this accomplished and the commitment to change all the fleet to e-mobility. And this is one leverage that will support also the market, or support also the manufacturers to provide the solution and to test the solution. For example, in Portugal, because the taxes is high, the companies, they provide the company car to the employees. So this is one way to promote e-mobility. But I think from my point of view, according to the policies, and nowadays I see the powertrains from the car to be stable, after this we can escalate e-mobility. Okay? But of course, the policy is very important. Also the governments to support e-mobility, otherwise nobody will buy the electric cars because it's not affordable for everybody, okay, nowadays.
Yeah, and again, a lot of your answers there, thank you for those, I think illustrate the fact that we might have the same ambition globally in terms of tackling climate change, but there's a different challenge for different reasons in each country. I'll be frank with you in that regard. When I see the targets set for this region, and by 2050, it's not with electric buses or electric cars 100% adoption. A bit of me, if I didn't understand a bit more than I do today, I might be disappointed by that. But to be frank, thinking of the challenges here, particularly environmental, with the heat in the summer and some of the other things that are happening, you've got to be realistic and practical. So I think, a managed transition is kind of, the task at hand. Now, we are going to talk about innovations and policy drivers. So, I'd like to reflect on that, Raine, and perhaps ask you, do you see anything as an innovation that's going to come along? And I'll give you a couple of suggestions, but you don't have to use them. Wireless charging, or battery swapping, or not owning a car at all and just using a robot car. Do you see any of those things coming at us fast that might really be game-changing? Or another one, bi-directional charging, where EVs earn people money, sat there, exchanging, arbitraging energy. Do you see any of that in your part of the world?
Okay, so yeah, basically the innovation, they will follow also the government policy. Okay, first thing, let's say like this, on the charging area, right now, we are splitting into 3 types of the charging service. Let's say like charging spot. Charging spot means charging with the slow charger, and then it should be like a parking slot. Charging station, it should be ultra fast charger, less than 20 minutes. So it should be, only for people that want to fast. It will work like a normal gas station. And then the second is for the swap charging. Okay. Right. So 3 different. After we announce about this 3 type of the charging area, most of the innovation come after they know that what they have to do with this thing. Because right now, especially in Indonesia, the charging spot and other is slowing down right now. It's simply because most of the EV owner, they charge their EV and then they go to the restaurant and then to other, and then mostly the charging EV is in the rest area, and then it makes a really long queue for charging. That's why it should be clear enough. If this is a charging spot, then it should be charging with the parking. But if it's a charging station, it should be fast enough so they can, okay, I just can charge with the ultra fast charger for 10 minutes and enough. Yeah. Okay, so something like that. And then the innovation will be based on that first. Okay, that's for the charging station. And then for the others, the innovation come in Indonesia, especially for the type of the transportation. Let's say like this. Indonesia is really famous of the traffic jam. Okay, maybe like the most traffic city is like Jakarta and Bandung. And then the type of the city is not like, it doesn't have any big roads like in Abu Dhabi and Dubai. So they need a specific solution for the public transportation in the city. That's why we know that there is LRT here. I mean, like around the world also. But in Indonesia, there is mass transportation that lighter than LRT. I mean, like LRT is light, rapid transit, but there is a lighter one because what? Because it should be put at the center of the city, and then the city in Indonesia is like small. Yeah, I mean the road is really small. So this is also make Indonesia. I mean, like because of this, they make some innovation, build new type of the LRT, the lightest LRT that can turn only with the small radius, like 15 meter radius. So it can use on the small city, and then I mean, like it will solve the traffic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just quick question. You mentioned 129 million two-wheeler vehicles, scooters, whatever you call them. Do you have that company, that proposition, Go in Indonesia? Have you heard of Go Row?
Go Run? What's that? Go?
Sorry?
Go Run?
Go Row. It's basically electric two-wheelers with a battery you can plug in and plug out.
Yeah,
a little
swapping
cassette.
battery.
Yeah, do you have that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, don't worry. You won't be electrocuted. I know it's an electric vehicle event, but you won't get electrocuted, trust me. Okay, so you do or you don't have Go Row there? Do you have that?
Yeah, Indonesia, yeah, we have that also.
Okay, good. Because I mean, that's a very good solution. And battery swap isn't just about big batteries in cars like NIO, the Chinese company, do. Oh, a few others now, in truth. So that's curious. I'd really like to come back to yourself, really, Alexis, because again, one of the comments, I'm trying to think who it was earlier on. Yeah, Craig Stevens earlier on said, one of the problems consumers have got now with electric vehicles is we keep hearing about this better battery or this better whatever, or they'll come down in price. So as a consumer, you can understand that people wait. They think, well, if there are new things coming out next year, I'm going to wait because this electric vehicle revolution isn't mature yet. New stuff's coming. How do you deal with that from an investment perspective? How do you try and project, as to where the kind of end game's going to be, whether it's in batteries or charging or, EVs?
Yeah, I mean, first we are not smarter than anyone else, so we look at the figures and we try to anticipate and what it's for sure, and it's already happening. It's to give you some idea. The number of electric cars in France is represent up to 15%, up to 20% of the new cars now started in France. And it's been the second largest years, and it wasn't obviously the case 5-6 years ago. So things are really happening. We see that. Even though electric cars out of the 20-something million cars in France, it's still roughly 2% overall. So it's still small numbers, but the dynamic is clearly there. And the rationale for that obviously are policy drivers. And over the last only 3 years, is a very strong stance, and so it created some backlash at some point. But they are very strong policy. To give you also another example, this year only, there was 25 cities that are now obliged to including obviously Paris, to apply what we call low carbon zones. And those zones are, which is a very big drivers. Obviously, it's somehow applies a lot of change, and it doesn't go that easily. But that only, and we know it's not going to move. It's a key drivers, and it wasn't the case 5 years ago. So if we look at what's happening over the last 5 years, and we anticipate over the next 5 years, for sure we see that the dynamic is there. And the change in mentality as to electric vehicles, despite the obstacles, the price and everything, is clearly happening right now. So that's Yeah, and we know for sure as an investor that when these dynamics occurs and happens, that it's not going to change overnight, despite all the obstacles. So yeah, I mean, we are witnessing that. We're investing both other equity and debt, short-term or long-term debt providers, and and we know that we're not taking any big technological risks, but just by virtue of the change in mentality and this dynamic in new in the electric vehicles, we are fairly confident that over at least the next 5-7 years, they will continue. So that's at least for France, and for sure, we are also fairly active in Belgium, Luxembourg, partly in Germany, or also looking at Spain and Italy. It's fairly similar dynamics. Although France, clearly, what we've been witnessing has taken a very strong stand on EV.
Sure. Sure, and I mean, for anyone in the audience that doesn't know, they've done some pretty radical things in France. Mayor Hidalgo in Paris pedestrianized a lot of the roads and the places where cars would be. It's happened in other cities for sure, but Paris, one of the oldest and most famous cities in the world. Are you pleased, a British guy is talking about saying how wonderful France is? That they really have, looked at redesigning what a city is and how it works. So in other words, not just trying to make technology fit the city, think about, what do people really want? They want to be able to walk. They want to be able to breathe clean air. They want to be able to feel safe. So it isn't just technology driven. It can be that kind of policy stuff. So coming back, Andreas, well, let me really be blunt. Germany, is it not, is in a difficult place now because the auto industry, which kind of didn't change for 100 and something years, is now in a middle, or getting on with a revolution, with the Chinese seemingly overwhelming some of what the German auto industry has been so good at for decades and decades. Where are we now with the policy drivers to deal with that challenge of, China's trying to steal your crown?
Yeah, so now that's the question that I was afraid of.
Okay, if you don't want to answer it, that's fine.
No, it's sure. But I feel a bit sad. You said something good about France and now something bad about Germany.
I like Germany too. No, seriously.
Like? Okay. Yeah. Okay, no, sure. I mean, of course, the internal combustion engine was basically invented in Germany, and the automotive industry has always been a major factor in our economies, starting even before the First World War, but particularly after the Second World War. And we have started early on with electric mobility. When I was a small child, I still remember I went through the Technik Museum in Munich. I don't know if you've been there.
I have.
A very nice museum. And back then already you saw some futuristic cars with solar panels on it. So the development of electric mobility has started very early on. But I do agree that the strategic decision to go all in for electric mobility, both from the companies but also from the government, has taken maybe a bit late. But it has been taken. I mean, Volkswagen has developed a full range of EV products. Audi is only developing EVs from next year on. So the decision and the strategic decision has been taken, and Volkswagen, Audi, BMW and others are investing heavily in new product lines. I mean, we have a lot of, I think, also globally successful EVs, mainly in the luxury range, but now increasingly also for the lower budget cars. And I mean, that's the market segment that we maybe are missing for now, because if you are belong to a low income family in Germany, buying an EV is basically out of range.
Well, unless you buy a used EV.
But still they are expensive,
okay.
A lot more expensive than ICE cars. But with regards to China, I think we also need to be aware that behind the revolution we are seeing in China, and My wife is Chinese, so I'm definitely not an enemy of the Chinese, but it's part of the story that the EV industry has been heavily subsidized in China.
Oh, for sure.
And that's also some kind of market distortion, and we need to be careful, and that's what the European Union is doing to preserve a level playing field for all the market.
Yeah. So, but it is Vorsprung durch elektrisch. That's what you're saying.
Vorsprung durch Technik.
Okay. Yeah. Technical or electric. It's advancing through all of that. Now, Ivan, I'd like to come and ask you a question about both policy and innovation. To make an electric vehicle work, obviously, you have to put electricity in it, electrons in it, and you put them in a battery. And you do that with charging. Sorry if this doesn't sound a bit too simple, but how much do you think we're going to see in the future a far better charging proposition, which means we can have much smaller batteries, which means we can have much cheaper electric cars? What do you think is going to be the biggest and most important development? The battery or the charging infrastructure?
Both of them, okay?
Yeah, no, that's a cheat answer. No, I kind of...
But let me tell you one stuff. So the battery is something, technology that is improving, okay? Because nowadays, you know, the range of the battery is not the best in the world, okay? But can serve some countries, can serve some use cases. And we are seeing new technology on the battery that will fulfill these needs. But in other hand, the charging, as you talked before, you have these trends that is wireless, vehicle to grid, that honestly I don't believe at all. Why? Okay. Because wireless is a complex standard and everybody have to be on the same page, and to have a cheaper car, also cheaper battery, you need to produce this in mass. That's the only way. Okay? Vehicle to grid will depend every country, and there is economic behind this, because when you are, because it's a, look, first of all, the charger must be bidirection. You have to send energy and receive energy. So it will cost more money. And in other hand, the battery, when you are delivering energy, you are using one more cycle. So it's economic behind this, because the battery is expensive. How much you afford to lose part of the battery to win some euros, okay? Is economic part. But in other hand, what I look to the market nowadays, and I see big CPOs like Electra looking to this, because they are really investors, okay? And when you have a lot of charging points, you have to see the investment in the long run, okay? And a lot of people are not seeing this, because, for example, you can buy a cheaper charger nowadays and we install it, but you are looking to the energy efficiency, yes or no? Maybe they are not. They are looking to the security of the people, maybe they are not. They are looking for the long run in 10 years, I don't know, I don't think so. But just do a math, you know? For example, you can buy a cheap charger that have 95% of energy efficiency. When you're going to higher power, if you have 400 kilowatts and you have 100 charger, and the energy efficiency is better 3%, the charges is paid in 2 years. Okay, so you need, and also other thing that we need to look right now is what is the problem of the biggest CPO nowadays? Is to have the power, you know? And to have the power take time. You need to have the lessons, we need to install the chargers. So nowadays, we need also to innovate how we can leverage Emobility faster, you know?
Yeah, I mean, you know, you make a lot of points there. That's quite a good detailed answer. I mean, one of, I think, the fundamental problems is the long-term payback. It's the fact that you're talking about charging infrastructure, which I've heard some manufacturers say, well, that's the job of the government because it's infrastructure, it's long-term. And then, people that are looking at investing in it, they're going to say to themselves, well, you know, if the government don't do it because it's tricky, why should I? You know, where's the guarantee and all that stuff? Anyway, there's a lot more to talk about. I wanted to check, because I don't want to run out of time, are there any questions in the audience that people have? I've got plenty, don't worry, but if there are, have you got a question? Yeah, we've got a question at the front here, please, because I definitely want to pick up anything that is in your mind.
Hello, my name is Sahim. I'm from Evolve EV Charging Solutions, and I have a question for Ivan, which he just now pointed out that you don't want to lose a battery cycle of sending the energy back to the grid. Well, I mean, I'll talk from my personal experience. I'm a Tesla owner, and I just got one. One of the things that is in my mind is that, a car that the long-term purchase, when we initially bought another car, an ICE car, we drive it for 15 or maybe 20 years. But at this moment, we don't know if a Tesla can actually last for 15 years or a long term. So my question is that, do you think that battery exchange and long-term driving will be a solution for electric cars in the future?
Thank you. Who would like to take that?
I can answer. So your question was, if we change a battery, I have a car for 20 years, I change the battery is an option, right? Yeah, maybe it can be an option. But the most important thing is, for example, when you buy, for example, an EV charger right now, you have two things that you need to think, okay? Is the experience for the people. For example, when you buy a charger, you want to charge with the power that you have. And the other thing that nobody's looking is the quality of the energy that you are providing to the battery to avoid to damage the battery, okay? And this is something that nobody's looking, that is the current ripple, okay? This means if you have a good chargers, okay, that take care very well of the batteries, your cars, you see Teslas and other brands doing 300 kilometers with the same battery. So this is one solution. But of course, if the cars, and as you know, the electric car, there are less moving parts, for sure they live more time, okay? So if you can change the battery, of course, you can have a longer life. Okay. Or you can, from my point of view, it's, for example, you need to have different kind of cars because different kind of people can serve different kind of cars. Right. If you have a car that is a person that do 100 miles, okay, a second life of battery can serve to them. Right. And you can use, for example, batteries from heavy-duty trucks to them as a second life, Right. I think the market now is in balance. They need to start to balance because this business that you're talking about is not the demand right now, but I foresee in 5 years there is a demand to repair batteries, and it will appear, okay, and will serve this. Okay. I don't know if I answer your question. Okay.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, but it is a good question in that some manufacturers now are bonding in the battery to the vehicle. They have such confidence and faith that the battery will last a very long time. They're essentially making it to last as long as the vehicle. I'm not so sure about that myself. We've got another question at the front. Our friend from Sweden.
Thank you very much for a great panel discussion. My name is Rashid Farivar. I'm a parliament member of Sweden from the Committee on Transport and Communications. I have 2 questions. The first one goes to Andreas. You mentioned the new government's, how can I say, diplomacy is a climate diplomacy. And can you please explain more details what it means in practice when you establish your foreign affairs policies against, towards other countries? And the second question can go to Andreas or Alexis. When it comes to adoption of electric vehicles, when we historically look at Europe after Second World War, Europe has, how can I say, revived itself from the World War's ruins based on the combustion engine technology together with Japan. How realistic is this? Is it for Europe to compete with China, which is, how can I say, deeply subsidizes its electric vehicle technology development and sale and raw material processes? And what is your take on this question? Thank you.
Andreas.
These are both questions for me or only the first?
Have a go at the first one and
okay.
then we'll pass over.
Yeah, thank you first of all for being here with us and for the interesting question. So in terms of what we do here in the UAE is we created a public policy platform called Climate Talks. And we have climate talks every 6 to 8 weeks. And we bring together key stakeholders on different topics and have discussions, create a platform to enter into new corporations, raise awareness, shed a light on different topics, and thus try to increase the ambition and the awareness of both the government, private sector, and also the general population here in the UAE. In terms of what Germany does internationally in climate policy, there are, of course, the COP negotiations, the big climate conferences that happen every year in November, where Germany unites with other ambitious countries, also small island states, for example, to push for ambitious climate policy, as we have seen it in Dubai in 2023. But we also have development partnerships with South Africa, India, and other countries, I think even Indonesia, where we say, okay, you agree to reducing that amount of CO2 emissions in this period of time, and we support you in expanding renewable energy, for example. So that in a nutshell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone want to take the second question? I'm happy to if you don't.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, I mean, just on the second question, if I understood correctly, and which is, to what extent is it realistic to compete against China as it comes to electric vehicles? Yeah, I mean, all I can say again from an investor point of view and a French is, we have we are entering into a period of political instability for sure. It's already happening, and one of the key aspects of that is how we can, as a country, make sure we are sovereign in terms of energy. The thing is, in France, we've built up a very large plant of nuclear power that accounts for 60 to 65% of our own electric mix, which is an asset. And again, it's been debated about some decisions that have been made on that, but it is an asset. We are entering into an uncertain world. We have to maximize our own asset at some point, and in that respect, it makes sense to build up on that when it comes to electric vehicle. I mean, and our interest, and also as a European, is to make sure we use properly this asset. And as investors, we have to consider that and make investment accordingly. So indeed, we are not competing in many ways. We've probably made some silly decisions over time, but as of today, and if we anticipate, over 5-10 years times, it's all we can do, and it's to reinvest in this asset in order to be at least competitive and sustainable in terms of sovereignty. So that's where we are heading, and that's actually where we're making some of our investment, because that's obviously undeniably a key dimension of our ability to just live and develop ourselves.
Yeah, if I can just chip in a little bit. Look, we can't just give up. If you look at a company, for example, in France, Renault are being reinvented by a very strong CEO, helping the company become profitable again, having a more cohesive strategy, particularly on electrification, so on and so forth. So it can be done. But your question is a very, very good one, I think, that fundamentally a number of economies have been predicated on the car, combustion car, and that's gone away, and they haven't been prepared for it. They've been caught out, if you like. And I mean, I could say a few more things, but I'm not going to, other than to finish on a quote from a friend of mine, a gentleman called Simon Moores, who has a company that focuses on critical minerals. Because at the heart of so much of this is the battery. And you can only make a battery if you have critical minerals that you dig out the ground and you process. And one of his statements, he read it out to the US Senate Energy Committee back in 2019, and he said, we are in the midst of a global battery arms race, of which the United States is a bystander. He explained the numbers, and then he finished by saying, those that control the critical mineral supply chain control the destiny of the 21st century industrial landscape. That's pretty profound. And it basically says if you can't get your supply chains lined up to supply your industry and develop your, products, whatever your vision is and your strategy, you're in big trouble. And we are in that position, I think, a bit at the moment. Sweden and the Nordics are pretty good with mining and processing and whatever, a bit better than the rest of Europe. But when it comes to, policy drivers, a cleaner tomorrow and innovation, so much of this, it almost sounds a bit boring to say, but is pivoted around the battery, And so I would say to anyone in this region particularly, and I'm sure, I hope our panel would probably agree, if you get the battery right, if you can work on the battery and you can get the critical mineral supply chain to it, you're in a good place, and that helps. Do you want to add something to that?
I think I totally agree with what you said, but I also want to bring our attention to new developments around batteries made out of sulfur, for example, which is basically a byproduct of the oil and gas industry.
Yeah.
So that would make us much more independent. But going back to the question, I think what is key is, climate change is a global challenge that we need to solve together. And without the Chinese production and manufacturing capacities, it would not be possible. So let's have a look at the solar industry. So it's critical to find synergies. And I think some German companies, for example, Volkswagen has started in this regard and entered into cooperations with Shanghai automotive industry companies. So that's one way to go. I think we need to find the synergies. We need to have a fair market, level playing ground, and then also the traditional car producers, but also the new ones will have a piece of the cake.
And if I can be politically incorrect for a moment, in regard to what you just said, Andreas, bring back Herbert Diess. He could see what was happening and was... Anyway, that's another story. We've run out of time. Thank you, panel. I'm getting waved at by Fatima, which means we need to move on. I'm hoping that our next panel is going to be here all together. So we'll get a team picture. But in the meantime, can you please give this one a...